Welcome back to Chapter 4 of America's Boating Club's Sail Course. Standing rigging is the stuff that holds the mast up while we're under sail. Generally consists of two cables that run from the top of the mast, and the headstay runs to the front of the boat. The backstay runs to the back of the boat from the top of the mast. And there are also shrouds. Shrouds are the cables that run from the side of the mast down. So often boats have an upper shroud and then a lower shroud. The lower shrouds go from the middle part of the mast down to the side of the boat. These need to be adjusted to match the cut of the sails that you may be using. Here is a simple example of the standing rigging configuration that we'd see on boats down at Clinton Lake or in our area. It has the forestay or jibstay, and then two shrouds that go on the side, holding the boat, the mast from going up and off to its side. The top part of the cable is attached to the mast through a tang, and that has a lip sticking out, or a connection point lip sticking out, that the cable then can go through and is attached to the tang using the pin. And over here, if you look at this example, here's the tang. The cable is attached to that tang with the clevis pin, and the end of the cable has a swedged fitting that's attached to the cable using very high pressure. Here we're looking at the other end of the shroud cable as it goes and attaches to the boat. Here's the cable that's going up to the to the top of the mast, and our swedge fitting that's been built with that's been combined, pressed against the cable with a lot of pressure. And then we've got our turnbuckle that's going on here. This turnbuckle then allows us to really fine-tune the adjustments on the lengthwise as well as pressure. In this example of the turnbuckle, there's the threads go through here, and then there's a hole in the end of the turnbuckle that you put a cotter pin to keep it from coming undone while you're under sail. Then there's also this fork that allows for adjustment side to side. And finally, at the bottom of the cable is the clevis pin that fits through the chain plate that attaches the whole mast system to the side of the boat. When buying a used boat, you want to pay attention to the connection, or where the shrouds go through the deck, to make sure there haven't been any leaks that can damage the boat. And you want to make sure that the place that the chain plate where it's attached to the boat itself is very, very secure and doesn't have any damage or rot or anything like that, which sometimes happens in older boats. Here's a close-up of a picture of the turnbuckle. In this example here, there's really two types of turnbuckles that you see. Probably the preferred one is this type of turnbuckle that has an opening area here. You can see where we've got some ring dings that have gone through the end of the cable to keep it from coming undone. In this system over here, it's enclosed, so you can't really see how far the turnbuckle, the cables are inside that connection. But to keep it from coming undone, there's a nut on each end of the turnbuckle that gets tightened up against it and then creates the friction necessary to keep the boat from the turnbuckle from coming undone. The reason this is closed is this is a turnbuckle that's used on the front of the boat, and it has less friction as you drag the spinnaker lines across the front of the boat. Here's an example of how the shrouds and forestays and backstays sort of work together to hold the mast up. Here's our headstay, jibstay, forestay, and here's our backstay that's holding it going back to the back of the boat. But then we also have these spreaders, they're called. They're essentially pieces of aluminum that spread the shrouds apart further. And what that does is it reduces the compression load that holds the mast up. So if you look at this angle here between the mast and the shroud, if it were to go straight down, it'd be a much smaller angle and therefore create a lot more tension pulling down on the mast at the base. When we're out sailing, you know, one of the quick, easy rules of thumb is to sail upwind and then look at the downwind shroud to see it should be just slightly loose. And that's a good rule of thumb for us to follow. Here's an example of the way a fractional rig sloop would be set up. In this case here, we've got the forestay attaches to the front of the boat and then partway up the mast. This allows us to get better sail shape by bending the mast when possible. On a masthead rig, where the forestay would go all the way to the top, it provides more, you know, it's taller. And what it does is it allows us for a more jib up in the front because there's more room to hoist it up. This slide illustrates a boat with a backstay. Some boats have adjustable backstays, which enable us to then control the mast bend because you've got your jib stay going into the middle, and the more you pull back on the backstay, it causes the mast to bend slightly forward, which then controls our sail shape. It decreases the depth of the sail by taking the fullness out of the sail. It enables us to depower the sail and also tighten. When you pull back on the backstay, it tightens the forestay, which reduces the forestay sag. We'll discuss how all those things come into play when we talk about sail shape in future programs. Here's an example of a boat, a big boat that would normally have a backstay, except in this case we don't. And to compensate for that, it has swept back spreaders. So if you look at these spreaders, they are angled back as much as 30 degrees. And what that does is allows the mast to take more of the forces rather than have it all transferred to the shrouds and fore and backstay. The advantage of bringing this thing back is that it eliminates the need for a backstay. It allows for more sailcloth in the back part of the sail, because when you have a backstay going down, you have to get the sail on the inside of the backstay because it doesn't tack from tack to tack or jibe to jibe. The disadvantage of swept back spreaders is it creates a much narrower shroud base, which then puts a little more load pressure on the bottom of the mast. When we're running downwind, it restricts how far out we can let the boom go, so that we can get it. That restricts how far out the boom can go, and we also would have perhaps some chafe on the sailcloth where it rubs against the spreaders. Let's go over our vocabulary for this chapter. We've already covered chain plate. That's the part that attaches the shrouds to the actual hull of the boat. It's generally down inside, and that's built to a very strong area. Leeward is the direction away from the wind, downwind, and that's the opposite direction of windward. The quarter, it's not 4 of these to get you $1, but it's actually a way of dividing the boat up into 4 parts. We've got the aft quarter, the forward quarter, the port forward quarter, the starboard forward quarter, and things like that. The shrouds are standing rigging that supports the mast laterally from side to side. And the stays are rigging that supports the mast fore and aft. This concludes section 4 on standing rigging. In our next section, we'll talk about sails and how they apply.